Welcome back to Molten Lava Wargaming. This is our War in the Pacific Admirals Edition play-by-email campaign. We're doing the setup for the January 2nd, 1942 turn. Starting off in China, as expected, we're going to be advancing towards Wenchao, attacking up on the road to Sian, and bringing down some forces to help deal with these guys if they come onto the road. That's really all that's going on in China right now. It's pretty quiet. We're still concerned about these stacks over here and in Wuchang, but they're not making any moves. So things are pretty okay there. With Singapore, I decided that we're going to rest another day. The clear weather is tempting. Still not worth it. I'd rather just be a little bit more methodical and take another day to reduce the enemy fighter presence. One thing I am doing to try to resolve this situation is kind of demixing Navy and Army units. So you can see, like, it's only the disabled planes from this Zero Squadron that are left here. These guys departed to go to Kuching to support the Nells operating out of there. And meanwhile, the Oscars from Kuching moved over here. So we now have 3 Oscar 1 Charlie squadrons operating out of Kuching. Kota Baru's still a little bit mixed, but I'm sorting that out too. I've got those Zero detachments paired with the Nell squadron there. But that's going to be pretty much it, and they might be moving soon. With torpedo-equipped Nell squadrons operating out of both Bangkok and Kuching, there isn't that much need to have torpedo-armed Bettys operating out of Kota Baru right now. So in the near future, they may be moving, and they'll take the Zeros with them. That said, like, we still have more unready Sallies than ready Sallies in the 12th Sentai. 60th Sentai's depleted pretty badly. They need replacements. I've actually assigned them to ASW for the time being, since we have the submarine up here that I'd like to get rid of. So I've got them and some of these ANs also assigned. Oh no, not the ANs. It was somebody else. Oh no, it was the ANs. Yeah, so the ANs are partly going after the ground units that are left here, and partly on ASW duty to try to finish off this enemy submarine, just to get it. No, I don't think we've damaged it yet. So for the time being, the Nells here are going to remain on their existing orders to port attack Palembang, unless there are enemy ships to attack, which could potentially send them to Singapore if they detect ships there. But we have plenty of Zero escorts, and they're all 22nd Air Flotilla. So hopefully that keeps things in order. I wonder, was it an end? Yeah, and it was the 22nd Air Flotilla's HQ that ended up here too. So between the aircraft being of the right type, all from the same Air HQ, that Air HQ being present, I'm really hoping that these guys can keep it together. If these Nells go out, they're going to be escorted by the Zeros that are here, even if they go to Singapore. So I think I've become frustrated with airstriking this hex, bombarding this hex, and having ships reported in port, but we're not hitting them. So I'm like, you know what? To hell with it. I'm just going to take it. So we've cleared out the mines from Ambon. So I'm going to load up this task force with the 146th Regiment, and we're just going to take this hex. And if there's enemy ships damaged there, they'll be forced to scuttle. So that'll be that. I still have recon flights searching all over Timor. I'm going to keep them on Loudon just because we know somebody's here, but the recon score is relatively low with 3/4. While that's going on, Carrier Division 3 will port strike Loudon again. Might as well, but they're going to be pulling back. because fuel's an issue, and we're not detecting anyone out here. Carrier Division 2 is basically going to pull out all the way to Babel Doab to replenish fuel and aircraft, and get some much-needed rest. I've detached the baby KB again, and they're going to act as a covering force to the amphibious squadron moving from Ambon to Loudon. We're still landing... I think this is just supplies right now. Oh no, that's the one that's filling up. So the construction engineers have finished landing, so we have base forces that are on the way, so that's who this is. So that includes a base force, some Marines to keep watch on it, and some aviation engineers. So once they arrive, we can start moving aircraft in. It's still a little bit concerned about the amount of runway damage, but that should start coming down pretty quickly. And the arrival of base forces will accelerate that further. With Guam taken and Mindanao about to wrap up, I'm starting to think about setting my eyes on Balikpapan. Cotabo's probably going to end up being a rendezvous point for that, since it'll be pretty convenient to move forces from Guam over to here, along with whoever I'm not going to leave on Mindanao. That's part of the mop-up crew, basically. Because any resistance left on Mindanao I'd consider token. Not doing it just yet, but we do have additional base forces and support units intended for Balikpapan at Sama and Pescadores, possibly Takao and Cameron Bay soon too. We've been shuttling troops from there to Truk. As those ships come back, we'll probably start shuttling the base forces down. Meanwhile, like just about every Fubuki 1 that I have is kind of racing back to port to get its upgrade, because they don't have depth charges right now, and that upgrade's going to give them that, and that's pretty important for a destroyer. Four battleships have arrived at Truk. Only one of them's armed, and this kind of points to another problem that Japan just kind of has in general, and that's that we only start with one ammunition tender. And this battleship fleet actually visited that ammunition tender before it came to Truk, because it was in Babel Doab. So it resupplied, I guess, one of its 4 ships, and maybe a second one partially, from that ammunition tender, and then it went to Truk. And Truk's naval base isn't big enough to service those battleships quite yet. Or maybe it's just out of operations points. In any case, I'm going to try to rearm them again tomorrow and see what happens. The good news across this whole issue is that within the last 2 or 3 days, I had quite a few cargo ships that were being converted to ammunition tenders, and those have just about all been completed. So I, right now, have ammunition tenders being dispatched from Japan to all over the place, including Truk, and a lot of other places. Carrier Division 1. Oh, that can't be their orders. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, we saw the tanker replenishment group's path light up at first there. But Division 1's just going to take up a station pretty much opposite of on land of Port Moresby. To make it a little bit tougher to get to if they want to send surface forces after me, in case they do have them. But in terms of air support, I'll be able to have fighters over the amphibious group, and I'll have, adequate strike range to hit anybody that tries to come in. Still a chance they could get in and get out, but kind of making a calculated risk here. We're still seeing very, very low garrisons at Port Moresby, so we're expecting this to be an easy take. I guess a lot of the resistance we expected at Port Moresby was actually what materialized at Rabaul. So that's kind of why we had this mix-up. We were holding all these forces in reserve for Port Moresby when we needed it for Rabaul. Division 1 has refueled. The replenishment group is going to head back to truck so they themselves can fill back up. Not that they're that low, but they've used half of their fuel to fill up my carriers, basically. I have canceled the airstrikes on this guy since we don't need to continue hitting them. And we've got plenty of base forces headed to Rabaul to bring this base to life. Now, that said, in the coming turns, I'm going to be looking to start recombining my carrier task forces. I'm not sure how fast that's necessarily going to happen because there's a lot I want to do with them. I'd really like to hit Surabaya, and I didn't hit Sydney. I wanted to hit Sydney. I kind of wanted to take the tour over there. So we'll see. Maybe Carrier Division 2 will continue to operate on its own over in the western part of this campaign. But I definitely want to get Divisions 1 and 3 back together. And that's because I want to make it a priority to start interdicting shipping between the US and Australia. And when I do that, because I've been operating with divisions of 2 for so long, I think that's what my opponent's going to be expecting, and I want to use that to my advantage. So I would like something close to the full-strength Kido Butai to be ready to show up in force. And I think this shipping route would be a good place to do that because it might look like I'm overextended, especially if I show up like around Pago Pago or something like that. I have those 2 merchant raiders that have been kind of held back and kept in reserve, so they might be good bait to use for that. So like if I put them into the shipping lanes, they have scout planes, we can try to identify where the shipping lanes are, and then we can put some kind of a token force in position to interdict that with the carriers standing by to pounce if we see something juicy. Especially if what that juicy thing is the Saratoga in Yorktown, who very well might be called out to respond to like a surface interdiction if that's what I managed to put together. And I think that just about covers it. Yeah, I mean, there really isn't anything to talk about in Luzon. We're just moving to Clark right now. We're waiting on that. So, yeah, that's going to do it. We'll see you for the combat replay. Thanks for watching. Combat replay now underway for January 2nd, 1942. Picking up a base by proximity there. There's no actual troops there. No surprises here, really just suppressing these guys. Hopefully somebody with better depth charges will be along next. Alright, these guys are in shallow water, so deep reaching depth charges do not matter. We've got 2 damaging near misses already. Come on, guys. That's it, don't let him get away. There we go. Come on, get another one. Damn it. So close, so close. Yeah, so this is both something that makes me happy and also disappointed. We did not record heavy damage on this cargo ship. This cargo ship is carrying something, maybe artillery, maybe base forces, enough of something that there's guns being reported lost with this torpedo hit. Sadly, there's a very good chance this ship makes it to Pearl. Unless we attack it again. Traveling unescorted through there is pretty reckless. Let's sweep on Singapore. Starting the day off right. So while this is going on, this is probably a good time as any to mention that I changed my mind about something right after finishing the setup. And that something was about using the Zeros and Nells at Kuching to attack Singapore directly. Part of what's going on here is the Luzon air campaign has pretty much already been won at this point, and it's to the point where there's Zeros and either Bettys or Nells over there that really aren't being used optimally, and there was plenty of room for them at Kuching. So I'm starting to move some forces around, starting to kind of figure out which air HQs I want to have in which places and which commands should be associated with those, and reorienting to how that needs to be. But while we're working towards that, there's just no reason not to send the planes where they're needed. And where they're needed right now is to crack Singapore open. So, in spite of what I said during the setup, we'll probably be seeing that soon. That said, the sweep arrives first, which is very good news. We can see the cap of just 9 P-40s compared to yesterday when they had 18 at the beginning of the day. So we cut them in half. And then on top of that, for a loss of 1 Oscar, we just shot down 2 more P-40s and 2 more Buffaloes. So hopefully any direct strikes that arrive at Singapore will, 1, we'll have plenty of Zeros escorting them, because they've certainly been assigned, and 2, there just won't be that many enemy fighters to greet them. Ooh, lost one sallied flak. May want to increase their altitude a little if that's what's going to happen. Yeah, definitely. So what are we bombing at right now? 15,000 feet, yeah, so we're going to bring that up to 20. Absolutely no need to take flak losses right now. Damage to the airbase is fairly moderate, enough to damage 2 P-39s. Yeah, and half of this was ground attack. And with that in mind, we're not seeing enemy casualties on the ground. It's also in heavy rain, so maybe not an accurate indication of how it's going. Kind of wish, since all these are the same kind of plane and flying out of the same base, they just all go as one package. But don't always get what I want. What I am getting, and that I want, is with this sweep now arriving, we're pretty much guaranteeing that at least for the rest of the morning, there is not going to be any enemy fighter presence over Singapore. Which also means almost for sure I'm going to be resuming full bomber operations tomorrow. Maybe time to switch targets on this. Yep, starting to see smoke from the enemy below. Good indication that they're badly damaged and or low on supplies. So token resistance to the sweep, they don't even engage. Yes. So the sightings of those ships at the south side of Java will probably override the orders to attack Singapore's port. Yeah, there that is. This Talat. Not sure I'm all that familiar with how good or bad of a fighter the Hawk is. Although they basically walked right past the Zeros. Man, I'm getting such bad luck with this stuff. I don't get how they can just walk around the Zeros. Shoot some of them down. Alright, so ended up with 1 flak loss plus 2 losses to the fighters. We did shoot down 1 enemy plane. And we got some good hits. Heavy damage on 2 enemy ships. You know, I guess I'll take it. A tanker got away. You know, I'm just... It pains me that... Granted, I said I don't know how good the Hawks are. I'm 90% sure that they're no match for Zeros. So they're out-qualitied and outnumbered by the Zeros, and they just walk right around the Zeros and get to the bombers. Why? Stuff about this game I wish I knew. Oh boy. Oh yes. Oh yes. They don't have many escorts around here. So it sounds like not all of them are carrying torpedoes. Which is kind of annoying. Yeah, they only armed half of them with torpedoes. I don't know why that is. You can see the ones that were carrying torpedoes were quite effective. A little disappointed I don't see troop casualties here, but I mean the real objective is to close Rangoon. You know, getting actual warship attrition is a nice bonus. Okay, so we put our attack in on Loughton. We did find an enemy ship there, the light cruiser Perth. 3 penetrating bomb hits on it. That's going to sink it. Relatively sure. I I may be willing to admit to myself that the Lexington and Enterprise are sunk, especially if Recon doesn't turn them up. I think this is the first time we've seen an enemy sub inside the marshals. But our escorts are doing their jobs. Well, I mean, maybe not. They did shoot at my cargo ship. Alright, let's see if we can break through. We do. Minimal casualties on our part, and we beat them up pretty good. Ooh, we got the worst of that. Looks like the enemy troop presence may have increased. Something to keep an eye out for. Alright, can we finally get rid of these guys? No, but we did get 10-to-1 odds. Yeah, so they have nowhere to retreat, so these guys are basically fighting to the death, or hopefully fighting until they're broken and willing to surrender. Yeah, I can live with this. The enemy is low on supply. 77 squads disabled, along with 5 destroyed. Way disproportionate to what we had disabled. That's going our way. We should be able to wrap that up in another couple days. Nothing really opposing us here. Very nice. Well, overall, not a bad little turn. Aside from my little frustrations over there with Talat Jap, and it could have been worse. Like, I only lost 2 aircraft because of that, and we still managed a successful strike in spite of that. Ooh, and we have direct reinforcements spawning in our bases, so that's going to be worth checking out. Of course, before we look at that, I've gotten in the habit of going to tracker first, so we'll start there. You can see we've got a pretty modest victory point gain today, although I'm not really at all disappointed with that. Reasons for the slight change are that the air losses are pretty even. We did pick up a base, but it wasn't all that significant of a base. So we're basically getting by on Army casualties, it looks like, is what a lot of that was. Plus a number of sunk ships, but none of them were all that valuable. Diving into the losses a little bit, we did lose 3 Nells, and all 3 of those were off to Lat Jap in the strike on that armed merchant cruiser and a couple tankers. Not sure what's going on there. The tankers were empty. The AMC wasn't carrying troops, so it doesn't appear to be an evacuation. I don't know. The ships were just kind of hanging out there. Took some Oscar losses, mostly operational, plus a shoot down. These were the Oscars that were sweeping Singapore. We also lost 2 Sallies to flak. They were flying at 15,000 feet over Clark, and Clark apparently has too much flak for that to be viable. So that's an easy fix. We're just going to bring them up to 20. No big deal. Plus a Val shot down while attacking the Perth in Timor, and then kind of routine loss of a Babs reconnaissance aircraft. Yeah, and that's it for us. Allied losses look like they're almost all over Singapore. only 10 aircraft total, and of that, 8 of them were over Singapore. Rounding that off with the loss of 1 operational Catalina loss, plus 1 of these Hawk fighters. We're going against the zeros into that Jap, and did surprisingly well. Ships sunk are all Allied. We're getting credit for the sinking of the Spearfish. I don't even know where Dermaguete is. I have to assume that this is just somebody that was bombed at Manila, and they succumbed to their damage at some point, and we're getting credit for it now. This submarine was the one that we caught in shallow water off the Malayan coast. I have no reason to believe this is accurate. That's just false. Plus an escort vessel and 2 transports sunk off Rangoon. This could have been better if we had more torpedo-equipped aircraft, but hey, at least we got what we got. And I think going forward, the Allies are probably going to consider Rangoon closed for business, at least not unless they can put a substantial fighter presence there. Usually that presence is in the form of the AVG, and with them in Singapore and taking heavy losses, that's not really in the cards. You can just kind of look at the trends here. So pretty light day for air losses. Sunk ships, not much going on there, just getting a little bit more value with smaller stuff. And then, of course, victory points climbing, but leveling off in the most recent turns after, pretty big uptick on, I guess it's turn 26 it's saying here, but I'm pretty sure everything's 1 turn behind here, so turn 25. Alright, turning over to the map, we can still see we have an enemy submarine presence off Japan. 8 enemy subs still here. Now, something that we did last turn that I didn't mention in the setup is I started pulling a lot of relatively well-trained but not great-trained pilots to get into these squadrons that are doing anti-submarine duty here. So if you look at their ASW skills here, the lowest is 54 and the highest is 62. Usually my training goal is 70. I consider 70 to be trained to the point of proficiency. 60 would basically mean trained to the point of competence. And then 50s would be like barely competent or semi-competent. And then anything below 50, they basically don't know what the hell they're doing. So there were a lot of pilots in their 40s as far as ASW skills before I made some of these changes. So I'm getting reasonably competent pilots into these aircraft to fly these missions. So hopefully we're going to start seeing a result from that. You can see we've got this task force of 2 ships with the Mod 2 depth charges. So that's good. These are the guys I think that actually engaged this turn. They don't have the good depth charges yet. They will get them in March. So right now these guys are just suppressing the enemy. And then, whoops, that's just the other one in the same task force. And then finally we have these recent arrivals of 2 destroyers with Mod 2 depth charges. So 4 out of the 6 ships present here should be dangerous to these enemy submarines. So not much else to say except let's get on it. We had contact with an enemy cargo ship that we torpedoed. It does not appear we have him anymore. I think I'm probably in the setup going to go back into the combat report and get an exact position for where that torpedoing took place. And if it's On the seaward side of this submarine, I'll vector him in to intercept that specifically. Check the west coast for contacts, and yes, we do. But it's just an anti-submarine group. I believe we had a submarine contact in the Marshalls. Yes. Hanging right off Inuitak. Moving east. Interesting. So this might actually be somebody escaping from Manila. If that's the case, that's too bad. Especially since he considers himself healthy enough to attack me. I'm not sure I'm going to respond to this. Just something to keep an eye on. Looks like I've lost contact with the enemy destroyers again. That's disappointing. I believe we had contact in here somewhere. Maybe not. Nothing that made it to the map, apparently. Anyways, let's get back to the usual counterclockwise rotation. Pretty quiet around Hong Kong. Still approaching Wenchao, so nothing really going on there. I believe this is an uptick. We saw that our bombardment attack didn't really do much. It was kind of counterproductive. Oh, and we're seeing less enemy forces here. So even though their direction indicator was telling me that they were going to this hex, they apparently changed their minds because it looks like they're here now. So that's kind of good. We've got a whole bunch of enemy units, including weakened enemy units, that have consolidated here. They're in a rather defensible hex, it looks like, for now. Wooded, so that's a ×2. But I'll be looking for opportunities to work them over. And that may just be a question of getting enough troops onto them. So I know this unit's been broken, as have these guys. So we've got basically a division and a brigade free here. Not really enough at either of these bases to go on offense, but between well, my general attitude was these guys were going to contribute to the defense of this area. I'll just keep that in mind for now. I'm not going to do anything about these guys right away, I don't think. But it's coming. We'll see what they do. I mean, if they want to reinforce their forces at Wuchang, they can do that. Clearly I have too. I now have another tank regiment here. Yeah. So, I think we can hold on, especially with air support and especially with more on the way. And heck, if I need to, some of these units approaching Xinyang can always come down and participate in that defense. Meanwhile, we have begun to advance down the road after capturing Nanchang, and I left this ungarrisoned. That was stupid. That was not my original plan. Okay, well, I cut away to do a little bit of button clicking, but to solve that little mistake that I just caught, I split up the 1/10th Division into thirds, and the A fragment of them is headed back to Nanyang. They'll be the temporary garrison force until I get somebody smaller to cover it. And apparently this unit stopped moving. I hate it when this happens. So these guys are supposed to be going to help out with this situation here via Kaifeng. I don't know why stuff happens like this where they just stop moving. That's what happened with the Imperial Guards in Malaya, and that significantly slowed me down. Yeah, these guys need to get in there too. So we'll have 2 additional divisions then, protecting... Actually, was that a garrison unit for here? Let me be careful about this. Yeah, we need them as a garrison. We can't do that. Alright, so once again, just did some button clicking to resolve the garrison situation here. Once again, divided a division. 2/3 of them are going to proceed to the combat area, while one of them stays behind so that we maintained our minimal garrison here. We had a victory up on the road. It looks like the enemy's already trying to come back. They've got a little lead indicator. You know, at this point, I don't see any reason not to keep going. So as we continue to monitor these enemy forces, I am taking note that this unit here looks like it's potentially strong, which is interesting because I think this is the same guy we defeated and sent across the river. Yeah, why would he? That shouldn't be 10,000, should it? That doesn't seem right to me. In any case, I'm still awaiting the arrival of 2 armored regiments here. That's probably who this is. Yes. So they're coming down the railroads. They'll be here in another day or two, and then they'll probably need another day or two to unpack. It's doubtful any of these enemy units are actually going to be able to do anything in less than 4 days. So between those armored regiments, this division and a regiment, plus just the regular garrisons here, I think we're okay. Especially when we consider that the enemy's really going to be having supply problems. There's nothing coming down this road because we own everything upstream of this road, so it's just this road that they can get supplies down, and I don't see any issue with using the armored regiments when they arrive to shut that down real quick. Yeah, I can roll up any enemy unit that takes this hex first. If they take that base, that's the next thing I'm going to take back, and if they don't control this space, then this road gives them nothing coming up into here. So it kind of all turns on that, and I really don't see the enemy being able to fight all that effectively if they're starving and running out of ammo. So that's all I think we need to say about that. Over in Rangoon, we had a rather successful strike. Still not seeing a whole lot of enemy fighter presence. We're seeing some anti-submarine activity here, which could be bad news for my subs. But the way things are going right now, I'd really like my sub to get involved with anybody that tries to leave Rangoon, especially while we're hitting them. That said, we don't hold any contacts anymore, so maybe those ships have already left. With that in mind, we will be able to have a better view beyond Rangoon to see enemy forces approaching if we can get these bases online. So Chiang Mai is currently a size 1 and expanding. We have a construction company there working on that. Rahang's a level 2. We have a construction company along with a little bit of an aviation support unit that probably has engineers. And recently arrived is this base force. So I guess oh no, it's not I guess. The reason why these guys went to Pisanulke and stopped is so they could walk the rest of the way to Rahang. So that is their assignment. So they'll add to the base engineers that are bringing that up, and once it's online, we'll have aviation support units there as well. So this will be a much better base, is really what that all meant. We've come into contact with the enemy here in Mergui, so we can take care of them. We're still fighting here. The enemy here is surrounded. I expect we can finish them off in short order. Fatigue's pretty significant. I think I'm going to rest my troops today. No need to take unnecessary casualties. big potential news is Singapore. Only 2 fighters officially indicated in this area now, while the port is still indicated as full. So I think it's time. Is the weather cooperating? It sure is. Alright, so I've started moving some of the Sallies that I moved to the Philippines theater back. So our numbers are coming back up, both because of those transfers coming in and because of replacement aircraft taking the place of our losses. Yeah, so major strike coming up on Singapore. We've been seeing activity here for a while. No changes really to that. Significant amount of ships here. That really makes me want to gas up my carriers and get them down there. Yeah, their fuel state isn't great thanks to the short range of all these destroyers. And submarines everywhere. Yeah, 4 submarines detected. Still showing 3 ships in port, 2 classified as destroyers. I think we can be fairly confident that the enemy carriers aren't here. Looks like we've more or less eliminated Dili as a potential base. Alor's been eliminated as a potential base. So we're going to keep walking those recons down, just to be sure. Did a recon of Kandari. They've only got 1 bomber there. That's kind of surprising. I thought there would be more. So I guess the question is, where are the Dutch concentrating their bombers then? Maybe Balikpapan. Maybe they have an idea that that's where I'm going next. Not that that's all that unpredictable of a move. I'd say it's a very predictable move for this phase in the war. These troops are probably getting close to being ready to go. Yeah, the regiment's down to 26 AV, so they're probably getting close. So that's going to eliminate Loughton as anything that could possibly be sheltering enemy ships. Meanwhile, we have our base forces unloading at Ambon, so that is really good news. Runway damage is down to 11. And we don't have any aviation support ashore yet, but with them landing this turn, I think I'm willing to bring this base to life. So we're going to be looking to move probably Bettys and Zeros down over to here, possibly even Mavises. I think it's time to move the Mavises out of Babel Doab. Is Ambon necessarily the place that they're going to go? Maybe, maybe not. But this isn't a bad place to operate out of. Yeah. Let's see. I am putting together a few oilers. Like we have an oiler here. I thought we had one here. Oh, it's been moved over to here. So I'm trying to move some of these oilers over to Ambon. And I think there was another one loading at Babel, because Babel's getting tankers that are fueling it up. So yeah, the IRO. So the IRO's going to get some fuel, and they're going to make their way to Ambon, and what hopefully that's going to allow me to do is get a little bit of a gas and go for Carrier Division 3, and maybe that's going to allow me to punch forwards and get a hit on these guys. Timing's an issue. Yeah, the timing doesn't look good. Oh, here's even another one. So we'll have 3 AOs able to perform replenishment operations in the Banda Sea area soon. they're going to be slowpokes, and being able to escort them is an issue, but we're working on it. Alright, so Port Moresby still looks weak. One unit, not very well armed. I'd call that a base force. The invasion force has been detected, although very weakly. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. If they can do something about it, it's probably time for them to go ahead and do it, because time for Port Moresby is running out. The carrier division is undetected for the time being. That's kind of nice. That'll make it a little bit harder for subs to go after it if they don't know that this is where they are. So, at least for now, the Port Moresby operation is covered. We have one of the base force delivering amphibious task forces that's departed truck. Looks like we're still going to have one more filling up. Yeah, that would be Task Force 118. So they have not completed with loading. So this is the construction engineers plus some anti-aircraft guns. Also noteworthy, the task force that delivered the 4th Division to Rabaul has made it back to truck. I think what needs to happen here is the warships are going to detach for repairs. I don't see any need to actually unload these. You know what? Maybe I'll just let it happen. We'll have these ships available for the next operation, which could very well just be delivering supplies to Rabaul. Yeah, I can worry about that in the setup phase. So, we got a few additional units. So, yeah, Jaluit and Maloep, I think, are both in the Marshals. So here's Maloep. So I think it was the base force that's the new unit here, so it gives us 10 AV, which I don't really care about. Did get an anti-aircraft gun. Some anti-tank guns. Engineers will be nice. And a little bit of aviation support. So overall, like, that's not bad at all. Pretty useful base. Really the idea of that, I think, is just to dig in. And to that end, we are building fortifications, so we'll just keep doing that. Because at some point, the Americans are going to be back. And likewise, base force here looks like it's got similar composition. So once again, the correct course of action for this base is to build fortifications, which we are already doing. So that is good. And with that, I think we are done looking over the results. I'll begin doing the turn setup and let you know what we're doing. Although we probably have a pretty good idea. We're going to Singapore, and we're going to Singapore hard. So we'll see you then.